Hello, Accelerators. Today on 0 to 100, I would like to welcome Garrett Wright. He is a fintech superstar. He has been with a group that has taken a company public, and he is now the chief of staff for Stash, an investment app for the 99%, where he's been with them from $1 million in annual revenue, where they've taken it to $100 million in annual revenue and raised over $400 million in investment capital. We're going to cover some incredible topics that are going to help your business, such as subscription models, raising capital from investors, predictable cash flows, as well as financial forecasting for businesses of all shapes and sizes. Ladies and gentlemen, let's accelerate together. All right, Garrett, it is great to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
Awesome. So I want to dive in with you and talk business. So you have been working with your company for a few years now. You're quite successful. And I think you can shed some interesting light onto the entrepreneurs that tune into our program and are looking at growth strategies for their business. And one thing I'd really like to focus on, because this isn't for every business, but it's for many of the merchants and the entrepreneurs we talk to, those who are looking to raise capital. Can you just talk to me in general about the art of raising capital and how to approach investors to get them to invest in your platform?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I think before I kind of entered this space, and particularly venture-backed early stage startups, it was a huge mystery. I thought it was, extremely numbers driven. That's maybe my background in engineering. But the reality is it's almost all about FOMO. How do you create that fear of missing out? It's so huge. It's a sales process. So you want people to get excited, and people want to believe in something, and they want to feel like they can't miss out, and you got to create that tension. Um, and like, this kind of changes as the companies develop and mature, but I think it's particularly true in early stage companies because there's not
Mhm.
a lot of data at the end of the day. You don't have a lot of history. The financials are going to look upside down because you're investing in the business. And so you need to create this story. And I think that can happen in a variety of ways. Um, it's an early stage company. You could be focused on downloads, on usage metrics, charts that go up and to the right, that are exciting. You're in, a hot market. So AI, it's hot today. Fintech was hot a while back. 3D printing, which was hot years ago. And being in those markets makes it a bit easier. The team can be huge. So if have a successful track record, people are going to believe in you and don't want to miss out on the next thing that you're doing. So I think you can do this, depending on the business, depending on the space, depending on your background. There's a variety of ways to do it. Um, and I think it's really critical to be thinking about this as like, as a sales process, as driving emotion, driving people, to a decision intention. Um, and, you know, creating that FOMO so people want to be engaged and make decisions and invest. I guess the other like things that I'll say about it is it does shift over time. So
Mm.
as you get more mature in your business, um, people start to focus on different things, and it is harder to create FOMO with like just the team or just downloads. You have to start to show true unit economics, proven revenue growth, um, and then as you get really further down the line, say you're a public company, it's almost exclusively about the bottom line and like predictability. So it does change as businesses uh, mature and evolve. And I think for entrepreneurs, it's important to kind of know where you are in that stage, um, and have a strategy to like how you're going to create FOMO with potential investors.
So what I'm hearing from you, and I want to make sure that I'm clear on this, is one of the main things that you have to do as an entrepreneur or business owner, if you're going out to raise capital, especially if it's really your first round of raising capital, is building a story and building a story around that idea of FOMO. And what you're selling is you're selling what the market share could potentially look at. You're selling the traction that you have in your business. So whether it clicks or the amount of people who are visiting your site, and you are selling your team. Those are some of the key aspects that are really going to help you close that initial capital coming into your business.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh,
And these
awesome.
are the investors are making bets. And a lot of it is on the people and I think on the traction and in the space that you're in.
Amazing. There's something that you said about predictability and bottom line, and we're going to come back to that. I just wanted to highlight that because I think the idea of predictability is really important in your business. But before we do that, I want to stay on the investor track because I think it's a really important track. Investors help you expand your business. I mean, you could literally be a hair salon and decide that you want to franchise and bring in investors and grow to 200 locations. By the way, these things like this happen every day. You could be a tech play where you need to build out your engineering team and you want to expand your business and your offering to the thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of clients that you're servicing. Once you get that money through the door, how are you most effectively managing your investors' expectations throughout the lifetime of them being invested in your platform?
Yeah. It's a great follow-up question because it's I think uh, put some guardrails around the FOMO. So you don't want to like totally make stuff up, right? Because at the end of the day, once the investor makes that investment, you need to deliver. And you don't need to hit the numbers. Like investors know that not everything is going to work out. They
Right.
expect it. They discount your plans, but they want to see results and they want to see things move in the right direction. Um, and you need to deliver on what you said. Building a long-term relationship, any relationship, whether it's with an investor, a partner, a friend, is really built on trust. Does this person do what they say they're going to do? And that's critical. I think as you're thinking about building a long-term relationship with your investors, is clearly communicating what the plans are, um, communicating what the risks are, and showing results. Again, you don't have to nail your plan, but I think if you can continue to like communicate through the tough spots, to quickly learn, to quickly iterate and solve problems, and bring the investors into those discussions in a way that makes them feel uh, a part of the process, but not guiding the process. Uh, it really can create a long term relationship that will help you grow the business, help bring in more expertise, help bring in the next round of capital. I think it's not easy to strike the balance there. But the founders that I've worked with, have been great at this. But it does take, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of thought on how you're communicating, when you're communicating, and balancing like the story with what you think you can really deliver.
I like actually what you said about putting the guardrails around the FOMO that you create when your investors are investing in your business. And those are things like, and it's number one, because your investors aren't necessarily expecting for you to meet the matrix or the metrics that you're pitching, because a lot of times they're going to discount them, especially when you're a high trajectory business. But it is how you're mitigating and managing risk, how you are communicating with those investors, but also the results that you are delivering, at least getting close to or working on reaching the targets that you've put out there from day one. And those are really key points. And I will say that in my career, from a capital raising standpoint, when raising for real estate years ago, earlier on, I didn't always manage expectations as well as I should have actually managed expectations, where it was either the communication, not necessarily delivery, but going to my investors and saying, hey, I need help with something. Like we're having an issue with getting the financing that we wanted at the rates in which we were trying to get them. The reason you're open and honest with those type of things is not to create a sense of fear. It's like if they're invested in you, they're investing in you in the long term and they want to make sure that the deal is going to get done. Otherwise, their money is at risk. And a lot of times they can make phone calls or create solutions for you that you, as the novice business owner, aren't able to create yourself. So it is key to have that open channel of communication with your investors.
Absolutely. And I think it's easy. And I've definitely done this many times in the past. Is like you feel a bit, it feels a bit adversarial because, they invested their money in you and hey, maybe something went sideways and you doesn't go exactly as planned and you feel responsible and you
Mhm.
want to fix it. But you have to remember that, as you said, their interests are aligned. They're on your side
Yeah.
and they want you to be successful so that they can make their money back. And I think the trick is like, how do you communicate those things? How do you make sure that um, you don't create so much noise if you're in the minutia of details, and make sure
Right.
investors can really track the storyline. They're not in the day to day. So you have to really work on how do I step back, communicate clearly, here's where we are. Here's what I think we need. Here's what the results are going to be. Here's my specific ask. They don't, they have lots of investments. They don't have a lot of time, but they will make time and will help you if you're, specific and communicate clearly. And I think try to keep the confusion to a minimum because it's easy when you're in like the weeds of like, we didn't get this bill or this specific feature is 3 months delayed because of X, Y, Z. They don't care.
Right.
Like think about, really think about the outcome that you're trying to drive and like what your ask is from them.
Right. So you get the investors in, you're churning, you're burning, you're making things happen. You're starting to show some results. Once you get past the iterative or idea phase and you're in the business, what are some of the success strategies that you can create to build a unique business model, especially with what you do in your business model?
Yeah. So, where I work right now is very much a subscription business. And subscription models are great. Investors love them. They're high margin, they're predictable revenue. Um, and everybody likes predictability. They don't want to be surprised. And so a lot of business, move down this path of subscription. Um, and I think the key for subscription business is really understanding your unit economics. Um, because they can get out of whack. These subscription businesses can have high acquisition costs or they can have low retention. And then that creates a scenario where it's really cash intensive to, to build the business. Think about it as a leaky bucket, um, or a very, I don't know, good customer acquisition, um, analogy, but on the
I like it. The leaky bucket of customers. Yeah, because you definitely don't want a leaky bucket of customers.
Absolutely, because it's expensive to refill the bucket, and getting the cash is also very expensive from a dilution perspective. So you you really want to understand the unit economics. How much does it cost to acquire a customer? Why? What's your funnel drop off points? What are customers trying to tell you with where they're dropping off in that funnel or in your sales process? What part of the pitch is it working or is working? How do you double down on that? What's your retention like? Over time. Again, this can also be hard in the beginning because you don't know. You've only been around for 3 months, so you don't know what your 12-month, 24-month retention is. But you can use proxies and um, in my experience, the first few months are very predictive of what the rest is going to be. And so, looking at your cohorts and understanding what's going on with them. Why do customers stick around? Why did they leave? What makes them refer you to their friends? Really getting deep understanding of those key pieces of the unit economic puzzle, um, and including how much money you make from each customer is very critical, and how long does it take you to pay back that investment? Um, because you need to like investors are going to be looking at these things, and I think just the sustainability of the business is wrapped up into that payback period, the unit economics. And if you're going to, have a really high scaling, successful subscription business, that investors are going to be clamoring after, you want your payback periods to be, sub 12 months. Doesn't have to be there right in the beginning, but that's what you should be targeting. And how do you do that? And that creates good cash flow and good like turnover so you can continue to invest in customer acquisition and retention. Um, so to me, like as we've been working through the ups and downs of running a subscription business, I think one of the key takeaways is really to stay focused on retention. And I say that because you learn a lot from your customers, and the customers, if you have really good retention, you don't have a leaky bucket. It creates all sorts of opportunities to build low cost referral, organic acquisition loops to really drive down um, your acquisition costs. And it also allows you to, grow and expand with your existing customers versus having to go just keep acquiring new customers. It just becomes too cash intensive. And if you lose sight of that, um, it can it can build every month. You've invested a lot to acquire these customers, and more than you think are gone, in a month, 2 month, three, and you've got to just reinvest more capital. So I think really understanding retention and what's driving a good retentive customer versus not, is important. And the last piece I think is also really important is like understanding the financial aspects. Like, do you have the right price? What are the margins? Are you competitive there? Because obviously you want to create enough contribution from the subscription to really support and sustain growth in the other pieces of the, puzzles that you have to invest in, whether that's, your office space, your product development, et cetera.
So one of the things that, and thank you so much for going over what the subscription model should look like and the important aspects of building a successful subscription model and how you guys have done it is focusing on the unit economics. So that customer acquisition cost or that CAC, looking at what your funnel drop off is. So the success of your funnel, the efficiency of your pitch, the retention of the customer once you get them onto the platform, what your referrals look like, and then ultimately what your profits are based on all of those aspects. Those are what the key measurements are for measuring a successful subscription model and marketing plan.
Absolutely.
So you visited again that idea of predictability, and that's something that I do want to discuss in depth. How do you create that predictability? Because in my mind, that is what ultimately will create a very successful business model for you.
Yep. Yeah. It's not easy. This is a lot of like hard work day in and day out to get subscription models really humming. And I don't think they're ever done because the market's moving, new, competitors are coming out, new features are required to keep your customers. So it is like a hard work, to build these models. And I think once you get them really going, they're really powerful because they can buy you time to continue to invest and work in other things because of the predictability of them. But I think, you know, what I think about like how to like forecast these businesses, how to like think through scenarios is really important. So like what I do is, and like, sorry to harp on unit economics, but you're like, if you're out raising money, this is what investors will ask you about. But you really understand those, um, and know them well. And if you don't have enough information, try to your best to like lean on your investor for proxies and what they see in other their companies, that will help you predict some of these things. Um, and that's where I start like every forecast and every model is really like, what are the key drivers to this business, whether it's a subscription business or something else? Um,
Mhm.
because you need to know like how's the revenue generated? What's the contribution after the variable costs? How much money do I need to invest to grow the business? Um, and really understanding that. doing different scenarios to drive different sensitivities, um, can really help. I think that's where I like when I'm doing models, that's where I always start. Top line and what's the driver to the top line? And then what other investments do you need to make to develop that next feature, to add that next add-on that's going to increase your average revenue? Um, and you know, what you're trying to do, at least what I'm trying to do typically when I'm doing these forecasts is I start there. I start at the P&L, um, and I always land at cash.
Mm,
Cash is absolutely king. You need to know how much you have, how much this, growth plan is going to burn. What happens if your acquisition costs double because you tried to double your marketing spend, which does tend to happen. It takes time to optimize increasing marketing spend.
right.
When are you going to run out of cash? Because the last thing you want to do is take investors' money, really ramp everything up quickly. You don't have time to do it efficiently, or effectively, and then you're out of cash sooner than you expect. You don't hit those milestones that you promised or that you had in your pitch deck, and now
Mm,
you're really struggling to raise more capital because you're out of money faster than what you thought. So like
mm.
running these sensitivities and running the scenarios and the financial modeling and forecasting, I think is critical to any business, but in particular subscription businesses, because there is a lot of upfront capital to build the subscriber base.
Something I want to point out about subscription-based businesses that I've learned from a buddy of mine who's in the PE space, and they've been doing a lot of roll-ups of, the guys and gals with truck businesses. Like you take a pool company, there's been consolidation of electrical companies, there's been consolidation of plumbing companies, of pool companies, because they're actually taking exactly what you are doing from a technology standpoint and doing that with manual labor businesses where if you have pool cleaning, you actually sign up for a subscription for pool cleaning. And the reason that they do that is because now they've got 10,000 customers that are signed up at $100 a month or $250 a month, and they can predictably decipher what their revenue is going to be like, how they can spend money on marketing and advertising. They can now take that subscription basis to a bank and get debt. I mean, there was even a group who is a nail salon group, and they have a subscription based model. And I think there's maybe a couple thousand the nail salons within the company. I can't recall the name of them right now, but they do a monthly subscription model where you can get a manicure and a pedicure. And it might not seem like you can take this to the level of a business like that. But the same thing is you can drop in and you can get, 3 manicures or pedicures based on this subscription model. But guess what? They're actually only doing about 1 to 2 a month. They're still collecting the money. It's like a gym, and they're more profitable than they've ever been, where like a mom and pop isn't thinking of it that way. But even a mom and pop could do that. And then now that they've got that predictable model, you can take that and say, we've got $100,000 a month that come in. Now we can go to the bank and say, hey, I need a $500,000 loan. And the bank knows, okay, you're making this on a monthly basis.
Yes. I mean, I think it, the like power of the predictability, like has so many benefits. Um, it gives you time. It unlocks financing, um, and I think allows you to make these longer term investments in a business. Um, and I think the power of being able to plan effectively is really really impressive, and really I think unlocks a lot of capital. And the investor base, like particularly like as you get close, like further away from venture and more into like banking, traditional like or venture debt, it's formulaic. Okay, and it's formulaic based off your unit economics, and you can borrow 4x your whatever the metric is. So um, it is really powerful because I think these subscription business models have just proven out over time, whether it's a Netflix or you name it. Um, I watched this movie, a great like documentary on Movie Pass, which is a subscription business. I don't know if everybody remembers Movie Pass, but it was you could go basically see unlimited movies or, X movies in a month. It's a great documentary. And, of like getting your unit economics wrong because you know, they had went for growth at all costs, versus a more sustainable, slower growing business model. And, um, very interesting, like, founders who then, took capital and then lost control. And then the people who they lost control to really just blew the business up. Um, which I didn't know a lot of that story, but if people are looking for good documentaries on subscription business models, it's an interesting one.
So, talk to me about some of the common mistakes because you're going down that path talking about that documentary. Let's lean into that right now. What are some of the common mistakes that businesses that potentially could be high growth businesses are making in today's market?
Um, yeah, so I think one of the one of the mistakes that I've seen, as companies mature is, and it's not an exciting topic, but it's how do you run your budgeting process and your planning process? Budgeting is not a democracy. It should not be, everybody gets a vote. And there's a really great article, that Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz wrote, "How to Ruin Your Company with One Bad Process," and it is about budgeting. And for those who have like taken part of this, either like, part of the big company or a small company, I think can attest to like, it's all good intentioned. You want to get feedback. You ask your senior leaders, what do you need to be successful? Undoubtedly, what you get back is much, much more than you can afford because everybody wants more headcount. They start to play games. Some play more than others. Like, oh, I'm going to ask for 10 people because I know I'm only going to get half of what I asked for. So it gets out of control. And what ends up happening is you get either you agree to all that, you blow up your head count, you go from 200 to 500 really fast, you increase your burn and you don't get the business results that you expect, which is the worst case scenario. Or you end up telling everybody, no, thanks for all that hard work pulling together what you thought you needed, but we can't afford it. So, you kind of disenfranchise everybody who's involved in that process. And so what I've seen be much more successful is a very much like tops down modeling exercise, an exercise really done by the finance team and CEO and a few others of, let's start with what we think, how much cash do we have? How much can we invest in the business? What do we think we'll get from that, with reasonable assumptions? And then do ratios for everything else. A $100 million ARR business should be spending 1% to 2% on their hosting costs.
Hmm.
The ratios change depending on the industry, and stage of business, but there's like rough guidelines that I think in a lot of cases you can use, and that gives people something to react to, and, push back on. And if they make a good enough case, maybe you change some things around the margin. But I've seen budgeting really like surprisingly, uh, end in bad results. It ends in bad results, I think, because of the nature of the process. It can also end in bad results because of, um, just where you are in the business cycle and a market cycle. If you're in the grow at all costs cycle, which, up until a few years ago, we had been in for a long, long time, the investors are also pushing you to grow at all costs. And so you're looking for anything that will drive growth, and you're willing to underwrite all sorts of things that in leaner times, you may not underwrite, and it gets you into a lot of trouble. Um, because the other thing I've seen is you don't have enough runway to execute your business plan. And uh, I don't know about your experience, but my experience is everything takes longer than people think.
I have, yeah.
Like
Oh, the
whatever you
big
think,
life.
double it
So
at least.
if you give yourself a 9 month buffer with an investor and then take that 9 months and double it because it's going to be 18 months. And I've
For-
seen it in both my business, my fintech business and my real estate business. Everything has taken way longer than I ever expected it to.
Absolutely. And you need to make sure you have enough cash in those scenarios. And if you don't, it's very tricky, because you don't hit the milestones that you need to do that next raise, um, at the valuation that you want, and you either blow up the business because you run out of capital, or you end up taking capital at a really draconian terms, because you don't have any choice.
So one of the things that I want to recap on, and this is very important for business owners, and I want to echo what you were saying, is that your standard operating procedures are key to the success of your business. And it's not just, this is how we pitch a customer, this is how we do our marketing, this is how we do our bookkeeping. It is actually how all flows of money and who has the say in each department, in each field of your business. You have to have a standard operating procedure that you stick to, because if you get off of the rails, that train's running off the track, your business can very easily crash and burn.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen great examples, and it's in very small, like mundane processes where things kind of can spiral out. And it's, how do you approve contracts? Um, and you know, what's the review process like? Are you doing competitive bids or not? And I'll give you a good example. So you're in this grow at all cost mentality. You're pitching the big curve. You're going to get to 2 million, 3 million customers. That's what you tell your employees. That's what they think. That's what they then go tell their vendors, and they scale contracts to those sizes. Right. So now you're paying for your AWS bill to be this huge company well
Mm,
before you actually get there. And those contracts are very difficult to get out of. And I think for if you're not paying attention and making sure like, hey, like let's for contracting purposes, let's be much more conservative on the forecast so we don't get out too far out ahead of our skis and we have the right reviews and approvals. Um, Otherwise, you can find yourself like locked into 1-2 year contracts at rates that don't make any sense and are very difficult to get.
I have found that in my business, and some of the biggest mistakes that I've had, to your point, is getting over my skis in terms of either planning for or hiring for expected growth, not hiring for where I am in the business at the time, and accumulated expenses that either really harmed the business and slowed down the growth, or it killed the business flat. So you have to be very careful with your expense ratios and making sure that you have in place what you actually need, especially when you're in a business that's in a growth cycle. And what I'd love to hear from you is, how do you balance that short-term profitability and long-term growth and sustainability? Like, where do you make compromise?
Uh, it's a, I love this question. It's really hard in the moment to do this, because like you're seeing success. You're want to double down on the business. Like there's a lot of opportunity. You want to grow as fast as you can. Everybody's excited. People want to work for growing companies. Um, and it's just, there's a lot of momentum,
Mm,
um, that tells you to hire, what everybody's telling you to hire, even though it's way ahead of the growth curve of where you're at.
mm,
And so I think one of the things I think is really important for entrepreneurs and folks running these businesses is to like not get too caught up in it. You have to take
mm,
a step back and be like really honest and sober and your finance friends and FP&A and folks who work in this day in and day out can help like model through this.
Yeah.
What let's what is a scenario where we don't like we do double our investments and it doesn't pan out? What does that end up doing to our cost structure? And what does that do to our cash flow and when we'll need capital? And making sure that, hey, if that scenario happens, can we survive? How much risk do we really want to take? Um, and I think, you can raise money on a big growth story. And I don't think if you have good reason to, what I like is to have like gating items, right? So, hey, we have this big growth story. Here are like the gating milestones that will unlock more investment, more headcount. And that's a way to, I think, one, set expectations with investors is like, hey, this is the plan, but we have to hit these milestones first. And if you don't hit the milestone, say you miss or you're a few months delayed, it's a much easier conversation with the investor to say, hey, we're not ready to invest your capital yet because we haven't hit this milestone. We're not at the right payback period. We're not at the right acquisition cost, so we can't increase investment. And that gives
Mm.
you time to continue to iterate, and not just be like, we're not hitting the acquisition costs that we need, but so we're just going to spend more capital to hit the growth profile. And then you burn out your capital and you're in a worse position. So I think really having like honest and sober, like modeling exercises, that is really just internal for your own like understanding and understanding like what are your goals? How much dilution do you want to take and risk do you want to take that you have to raise capital?
Mm.
Um, and what outcomes are you really trying to drive at the end of the day?
So let's say that you get the business to a standpoint where it's revenue is coming in. I'm going to be careful with using the word cash flowing. So I'm going to just say revenue is coming in. You have SOP in place. You are seeing growth in the business and you're looking at taking it to the next level. How do you, as an entrepreneur, look to increase the profitability or the numbers so you can create a higher valuation for your business?
It's going to be, I think, that answers and the solutions are, I think, business specific. But for me, the process is similar across businesses. So I think one is really understanding what drives valuation because it is different depending on how mature of a company you are or what space you're in. It could be a multiple of your profit. It could be revenue growth. It could be something totally different. Um, or if, you don't have a lot of venture money and this is like bootstrapped, then it really is like cash flow. And so the metric and valuation, differs by industry and business. So I think one process, like step one is really understanding like what is the metric and what are you trying to achieve? Is it a high growth venture backed story where you want to make the investments, go public, you have a certain timeline, or is it a slower growth but more sustainable, profitable business that you want to sell to a bigger company, because you don't want to take all this capital and all this time, and all this risk that is associated with uh, getting a company ready to be at a level to go public. Um, and being a public company isn't fun for most people. It's a lot of stuff that has to happen. Um, and so like understanding what outcome do you want out of this thing? Because sometimes it's just, I want a lifestyle business that's growing healthy, that's generating cash. I don't care what venture backed or venture capitalists are going to value my company because it's generating cash for me and that's enough. So like understanding like your business, what's driving the valuation and what outcome you're trying to get, I think is really critical. Um, and then I think, understanding the financial statements to me, like the financial statements is like where the rubber meets the road.
Mm.
You can have a lot of like promising A/B tests. You can have a lot of investor story up into the right charts that are like around downloads. But if it's not generating revenue that is, has positive margin, that has scalable growth profile, you can see all of this in the financials. And again, the financials won't tell you what to do, but they'll tell you where to focus on, right? So you can compare your financials to what other subscription businesses look like. As an example, do I have a 12-month payback? If not, why? What's the biggest reason? Is my retention too low? Are my acquisition costs higher than my competitors? And you can start to focus in on what are, what has opportunity for more optimization, and think about what's the biggest return on your investment. If I can improve retention by, 5 percentage points, what does that do to the overall like physics of the business? Because now I have to invest less in acquisition, to continue than I did before. And now I can build more referral loops and I can do other things. And so really understanding those pieces is important. And I think it starts with the financials because you can often see like, okay, my operating costs, my G&A line item is way out of whack than compared to what my competitors are or other businesses that are in this space are. And then you start to peel back the onion of like, why is that? Does that make sense for my business? Sometimes it might make sense. But to me, it's start there and then really understand the drivers, and some of the fundamentals and the unit economics particularly for subscription businesses, but others as well. Really can give you insight to what levers do I need to focus on and pull to really drive the most value and most, you know, cash flow at the end of the day is really what you're hoping for.
One of my mentors told me early on in my career as an entrepreneur that if you don't have an exit strategy, you don't have a real business. And it's not that you're necessarily going to exit the business, it's you're getting from point A to point B, and then you create measurement. And what he taught me was that measurement is based around knowing your numbers and understanding how the inputs impact the output, which impacts your actual margin or your return. And those are all the things that create the value for your business. And it doesn't matter whether you're a tech company with massive scale and hundreds of thousands of clients, or you are a local mom and pop business. All businesses have value. We're actually going to do a segment on valuation in businesses, but all businesses have value, and you should understand at any given point in your time how much your business is worth. And guess what? There's companies out there who do that. So know the valuation of your business because it will help drive your business forward. Awesome. So, Garrett, we're going to do something fun. We're going to do a little rapid fire. You ready for
All
me?
right.
These
All
are
right.
questions that you don't know are coming down the pipe.
Okay, great. Great.
All right. So, fruit smoothie or glass of red wine?
Oh, jeez. I'm not answering these very rapid fire because it depends on the time of day. I'm going to go fruit smoothie right now because I have a newborn and
All right.
drinking
Cool.
alcohol
Well,
is
if you
not
have a
as.
newborn, it should be shots of vodka, but I have no judgment. I would go with red wine.
There's nothing scarier than being a little buzzed with a newborn and being
Oh
worried.
yeah,
So
right. Like, oh, I don't
that's
want to
why I'm
drop.
going with fruit smoothie.
Okay, good man, good man. Rabbit or turtle?
Oh, rabbit.
Who would win in a fight, Barbie or My Little Pony?
Barbie.
Why would Barbie win in a fight?
Uh, Barbie wins in a fight because it was a great movie and I didn't want Barbie to lose. And I haven't seen My Little Pony in a long time and I kind of forget.
Yeah.
It's,
Okay.
it's
Gotcha.
in my head,
Um,
she can tame My Little Pony and win. And it doesn't end up in any violence. It's a discussion.
If you were in a zombie apocalypse, what weapon would you grab?
I always tell people that, because this, I don't know why this question comes up, but it comes up, and I'm always like, I'd like to be the first that dies, because I don't think I want to survive in all this madness.
Oh my God. That's actually a very creative, deep, dark, maybe response that we'll unpack some other time.
Yeah,
What is,
as
yeah,
a parent now, it's like maybe I feel like obligation to,
yeah, there you go.
I don't know.
Try to save the world.
Yeah,
What is your favorite phrase in business?
I don't know if I have a favorite. I'm just thinking back through our conversation, um, and the one I think unit economics I think is the thing I said the most. So I'll go with that. There's always a
Awesome.
lot of lingo in business, and I don't know. Sometimes it turns me off.
Cool. I'll take it. One book that has influenced your career.
Um, the uh, I don't know if we got to this, but also Ben Horowitz um, wrote a great book about his days as an operator called "The Hard Thing About Hard Things." Um, and I would highly recommend any entrepreneur to read it, or business owner to read it. It's very engaging and a good read, but it also has a lot of like material and appendices that are like very practical. So how to hire a good salesperson, what should you be looking for? You know, you want your sales team to be very motivated by money. You want your finance team not to be motivated by money. And
Mm.
lots of like practical examples and advice that he's seen that I found, had resonated well with my experience.
Awesome. If you are running a business that is doing 10 million in annual revenue, and I magically show up one day and give you a $300,000 check, what would you suggest that business invested for growth?
Oh, this is a really hard question to answer without understanding anything about the business.
Let's call it. So let's do it again. Let's say you're a tech business
Yep.
and you're providing a subscription service and you're doing 10 million in revenue on an annual basis. And I show up with a $300,000 check. What would you advise that business owner to do to help increase their revenue?
Um, if they have a good marketing engine in marketing, customer acquisition.
Customer acquisition. Great, great, great response. Marketing, customer acquisition. I love that. All right. Last but not least, what is the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome in your professional career that you overcame and it's made you who you are today?
Um, I've had a very winding career. Um, and I think, I'm not sure it's an obstacle, but, um, not getting bogged down in the path you're on,
Mm.
um, and really pursuing your interests or passion, even if it feels like a step backwards from a career perspective or financial perspective, is really like unlocked my longer term career as I look back, because I picked things that I thought were interesting. 3D printing, that sounds interesting. Sure, I'll take a step back and be the first, you know, find like FP&A hire there. Um, so I can point to a lot of different points in my career where it wasn't, I could have took a weird left turn, and uh, I don't regret any of those left turns. I'm glad I took the risk, and went for it.
Awesome. I love that. On that note, Garrett Wright, thank you for joining us on Zero to 100.
All right. Thank you, Jared. I've enjoyed it.
So, Garrett, do everybody a favor now that we had a very fruitful interview. If people can find you or follow you, please let us know what is the right platform to do so?
Well, I am largely antisocial and don't.
By
So
the way, I own the URL antisocialsocialclub.com. I can find
okay, that's good. That's good. So while I guess the best place to find me is on LinkedIn, although you will not find me posting very often. So that's the best place.
excellent. Well, I'll make sure that we get that link in the follow up. Again, thank you, Garrett.
All right. Thank you, Jared. I appreciate it. It's fun.
Awesome.